Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the latest edition of True Crime with the Sarge. I'm your host, Joseph Jackalone, and this is what I want to start off with today. This is a message for police executives and politicians out there. Please use your public information officers, or PIOs for short. This does two things, folks. The public information officer, first of all, is their job, that's their training. They know how to answer questions, they know how to not answer questions at press conferences. We've seen a lot of trends released recently that the police chief or the chief of detectives or the politician, the mayor, or what have you, must get in front of the audience and talk about this stuff, and they don't know what they're saying, and they say things that they shouldn't say. It's been awful. Use your public information officers in the beginning, right? So we already said they know how to answer questions, they know what to do. And the second thing, and probably the most important thing about using your public information officer, is that if there is information that was put out initially that's wrong, it's easy to walk it back. Because once you, the police chief, or once you, the mayor, says something, it's considered gospel and it gets reported on that. As the public information officer, you always have, you can say, listen, this is the information that came out. Investigations are dynamic, things change. So everything we tell you now could change, 5 minutes from now. And it's important that they start doing this, but they're not. They got to get in front of this camera and they're saying things and doing things that just doesn't look good. So, for instance, the LA chief of detectives, I think his name is Alan Hamilton, the night of the Rob Reiner and Michele Singer Reiner homicide investigations, stood outside the house and gave a press conference. Now, let's start off with the good part. He referred to it as a death investigation, and a lot of people question, like, why a death investigation? These are murders. It should be a homicide investigation. No, folks, the way every case should be treated is as a death investigation. Everything's a death investigation until you prove otherwise. So, all right, we have the five manners of death: natural, accident, suicide, homicide, and undetermined. It's up to the police to just figure out what's going on in the investigation and hand it off to the medical examiner to see what they say also. So, the rush to get things out is never a good thing. So, that was the good thing. But one thing that I learned, I think I had one press conference in my entire career. I've mentioned it before, but it's worth mentioning again. I'll tell you in a second. But the motto for policing used to be less is best when it comes to press conferences. You have an ongoing criminal investigation going on here. You don't want to tip off a potential suspect that may be on the run, who's now going to be on the run if he wasn't already. You have to be really careful about the information that you release. So it's important. Less is best. And here's another tip for the chiefs and the mayors out there. If you're not going to answer questions, or you're going to ask questions and then not answer any of them, just tell them that we will not be answering questions at this time. The chief of detectives said he was going to answer questions, and then because every question was dodged, every question was then turned into another question, and he kind of looked bad when it came out to the situation where they said, "Is there a suspect in custody?" And he said, "We have no suspect in custody." And then they followed up with, "Well, is the community at risk? Like, where's that message?" Which is something I always tell you guys, right? When you're watching these pressers and you want to know if the police have a suspect either in custody or they have somebody or a general idea who the suspect is, they usually say something to the effect that there is no danger to the public. When you hear that, that is an indication that they either have somebody or they know who it is and they're after 'em. And that's something I've told you guys 100 times, and it was even true in this case because he started getting a little dodgy when it came to certain aspects. You cannot stand up there and say we don't have a suspect, which he did. You can't say we don't have anybody in custody, and then say there is no threat to the public. The news people were rightly to ask, like, what are you talking about? And it just kind of got worse from there. You have to deal with this information. And as the investigator, as a former investigator, right, you never want to put out any of this stuff in the media. He did talk about the search warrant. He says, we're waiting on a search warrant. And they're like, why? And he couldn't answer it because once again, he would have to then implicate the potential suspect that they were looking at. Now, folks, I always tell you there are three things which I refer to as the forensic horsemen, and those are the things that solve crimes. And the three forensic horsemen are video surveillance, cell phone records, and internet records. Now, you cannot tell me that the house that Rob Reiner and his wife lived in and shared with his kids didn't have a sophisticated security system and video system. This guy, Rob Reiner, was having heads of state. He is having a dinner that night with former President Barack Obama and his wife, Michelle. So you're telling me that there aren't videos of this entire incident, either inside or outside or what have you? I think we'd be mistaken about that. And other than that, what other kind of direct evidence would we be looking at? I know the sister said something allegedly that she would tell the police to look at the brother, but folks, let's call let's just figure this out here. There's a guest house which allegedly the son Nick Reiner lived in, and I guarantee you there is video cameras everywhere from the guest house into the main house, including all of the surrounding areas. Rob Reiner was a major Democratic donor and had all kinds of, I don't know if he had heads of state, but he was having the former president of the United States there. So he has some significant guest lists. And the fact that he's a famous actor and all the other things going on. Video surveillance, I'm telling you, is going to play a big part in this. We will see. According to the DA, they will lay out their evidence in court. We're going to get to the DA's presser, which was much different than what the police were giving out. When he didn't have any comments about clothing, weapons. This is the police chief of detectives, excuse me. Didn't have any of those questions. Like I said, we were taught when you do the press conference, you go up there saying, this is what we know at the time. Like, the only thing that they really should have gone out there and says that at 3:40 p.m., the LA Fire Department responded for a call for help or whatever the 911 call was about. Found two bodies, notified the police department. We came and showed up and we established the crime scene. At this moment, we are applying for a search warrant for the home. And that's all I can tell you right now. That's all they had to say. That's all they had to say. We can't tell you the victims because according to what the chief of detectives said, they couldn't release the name of the victims because he says that was the job of the medical examiner. Which brings me to another point with the LA medical examiner. Folks, I don't know for sure, and this is pure speculation, but there seems to be some sort of strain between the LAPD and the medical examiner's office. And it kind of came out here. We know that there's been a issue with the David case, which everyone seems to have been forgotten about, right? The Celeste Rivera Hernandez homicide. Everyone seems to have dropped that. And it is important to look at this kind of thing and say, what's going on here? Now, the medical examiner didn't show up for a long time. Now, listen, folks, the medical examiner rarely will come to a scene. They have medical legal investigators. So they will absolutely send them instead. So I don't see that as a big deal. Like, oh, the ME didn't show up. I ran into the medical examiner once in the entire time dealing with this stuff. And it's generally because there might not have been anybody else. The medical examiner is not running around the city of Los Angeles going to every death investigation, folks. It's just not happening. That's why we have MLIs, people like Barbara Butcher, people like Joe Scott Morgan, people who are highly trained in the death investigations who go to these scenes on behalf of the medical examiner. And they are the ones that determine if the case is going to go to the morgue for an autopsy or not. Their job is extremely important. And that's what goes on in LA. So I wouldn't read into any of that stuff, especially these tabloids. We won't name any of them in particular, but geez, I mean, they have been wrong about so many things. But folks, there is something going on between the ME and the LAPD. I don't know what it is. I can't put quite my finger on it, but they're supposed to be working in tandem and being able to do this. Denise, thank you very much, member For 6 months, thank you very much. Thank you. You love the education you provide to all of us. Thank you. Well, I try, right? So it makes things a little bit, interesting in that respect. So let's go on. The LAPD's chief of detectives, he was actually at the presser for the DA yesterday as well. So that went entirely different. So the district attorney, Nathan Hochman, had the chief of police, McDonald, I think his name was, and the chief of detectives, Alan Hamilton, there. Now, let's go through the charges quickly. So Nick Reiner is getting charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder with special circumstances. And everybody knows Lauren Conlon. If you don't know Lauren Conlon, you should be following her on X because she's been reporting. She's now a writer for the LA magazine, and she's been on top of a lot of these things. And we were talking back and forth when this was going on, and I had said to her that this is going to be a murder first degree, and maybe even a death penalty case because of the nature of it. Even in New York, when you have at least 2 victims killed at the same time or in succession, like a spree murder, those are what we call special circumstances and always go for the first degree murder charge. Like serial killers would be a first degree murder charge because it's more than one body. And the fact that the knife was used during it, that kind of adds to it. And the district attorney laid that out pretty well. And he discussed about that this was life without parole, life without the possibility of parole. And then he also mentioned that this is a death penalty case, but we are not making the decision on that, which I thought was a great line because to me, I read into that as we are going to use that as leverage. Meaning, if he wants to take a plea, we'll give him the plea, we'll drop the death penalty charge, but he's going away to jail for the rest of his life. And that's basically how these things go in a lot of cases. Do I know for sure? No, but that's just the way these things go. He also mentioned the medical clearance. And now I'm also witnessing, I think all of us are witnessing this. The pressers are are out there answering, I think, what some of the tabloids are saying and some of the true crime people are saying. And they talked about the medical clearance, right? So everybody was jumping to conclusions because this kid has had a bad history in regards to drug use and all the other things that go along with it. So the issue that comes down to is everybody goes through this medical clearance. In New York, everyone, you arrest somebody, you bring them down to whatever central booking, whatever county you're in, and they got to go through medical clearance. Now, this happens to be a pretty lengthy medical clearance, however, though. This usually doesn't take this long. So I don't know exactly what's transpiring with all of that. But people are like, well, what about his mental acuity and all the other stuff? Folks, that doesn't happen until he's going to be, after arraignment and all the other things that go along with it. That's not going to happen at this moment. It will happen shortly. Now, we do know that he has hired Alan Jackson, which is not a big shock. I mean, the guy is LA based. He's probably the most famous lawyer right now in America. And Nick Reiner has a lot of money, or at least trust fund kind of stuff. I mean, he's got the money to be able to do this. I'm assuming his grandfather Carl Reiner, uh, passed away like 4 or 5 years ago. Maybe there was money sent to him that way also. I mean, you're talking about a legacy family here in Hollywood. Deja vu. Thank you for becoming a member. Thank you very much. And the issue that comes down to is at this point, I don't know why people are so concerned about his mental issues and everything else. That's not the public's job to worry about that. That's what the district attorney has to worry about. Excuse me. And the fact that they have no arraignment date, which is also kind of odd. Uh, New York, you arrest somebody for a felony, you have 5 days to arraign them. So I think the clock is ticking. I think we're going to see Nick Reiner in a courtroom relatively soon. And if he's not in a courtroom because he's in the hospital, they'll do a bedside arraignment, right? So what is a bedside arraignment? Just what it sounds like. Wherever the person is in custody, this might be a good quiz question for today. A bedside arraignment is anywhere that the person is in custody and cannot physically make it to court. They will send the district attorney. They can have their defense attorney there, and they will send a judge, and they will have the person arraigned right there at the bed. Simple as that. I've actually witnessed that a bunch of times. It's actually pretty interesting. So, yeah, you know what? That'd probably be today's quiz question. What is a bedside arraignment or something to it? The well, let's talk a little bit about the arrest. So then I got a little, I guess, a little nervous in regards to when I saw the chief of detectives step up to the podium again. I said, "Oh boy, here we go." But he was more polished this time. He was ready for a lot of different things. So they talked about the arrest, and I think he gave out some clues, and we're going to discuss those clues here in a second. But they said he was arrested. Nick Reiner was arrested at a place called Exposition Park, which is not far from University of Southern California. And they did mention that it's about 20 miles from the crime scene. And you're dealing with a situation where you say to yourself, well, how far can you get away from the crime scene? Remember, according to the press release by the district attorney, Nick, excuse me, Rob Reiner and Michele Reiner were murdered. All they said was the early morning hours. And we are dealing with a situation where now, I don't know if it was TMZ or what have you, say that he had a hotel room. Nick had a motel room at checked in at 4 a.m. So if that's true, we can now kind of narrow in the timeline, so to speak. The clue that I think that the chief of detectives gave out was that he said that when they asked him, like, how did you find him all the way over there? He said that we had, first of all, the U.S. Marshals were involved in this, and he referred to what they call, unquote, investigative tools. Now, if we want to read into this, the you have to read into this. You could say they tracked him via his cell phone. Do I know for sure? No, but that's going to be my educated guess that they tracked him through his cell phone. Remember, part of your three forensic horsemen, cell phones. I mean, that's basically you can narrow down somebody within a few feet. And when I heard about the feds being involved in some of this stuff, that's the first thing that I thought of. Now, there was another issue in regards to what was being reported in the news, and that was Billy Crystal was in the crime scene and all the other stuff. And I kind of responded to that on Twitter when I first heard it. First of all, there's no reason to have anybody at the crime scene, period. I couldn't imagine the daughter, Romy, calling 911 and then reaching out. I can think about reaching out to family and friends, but bringing them into the crime scene, I thought would be unusual because of probably the nature of when you have a stabbing homicides, these scenes are absolutely awful. And she is going to need some help to get through this. First of all, it's your parents, and second of all, it is one of the worst ways that people can be killed in so many things. And the issue that comes down to is what be the purpose of bringing them into the crime scene. Now, why is it a bad idea? Well, because low cards exchange principle, all the different things that you're introducing additional crime scene dynamics into it. But then Billy Crystal, I guess through his representatives or whatever, made a statement saying that this is not true, that he was not inside the crime scene. So that's a good thing in that respect. But yeah, we have to take everything that we get from some of these tabloids with a grain of salt. So I see a question here from Missy. They were in rigor. Well, think about this. If they died in the early morning hours, let's say, just use for argument's sake, easy numbers, 3 a.m. They're found at 3 p.m., so 12 hours. Not only would you have rigor mortis start at about an hour and a half into it, but you also have livor mortis would probably be fixed. Now, all depending on the amount of clothes they're wearing, the temperature in the room, in the house, that all affects it. If it's really warm, then this stuff happens faster. But they would have been in rigor for sure. Would they have been in full rigor? Almost, right? Because we know that rigor goes, I forget, like on this thing, everything I do is opposite of what I'm doing, but it acts as a bell curve, and about 15 hours or so, you're at the top of the bell curve, and that's when things now start going down the other side. So when you're dealing with rigor mortis, it's really difficult to determine if you are going into it or coming out of it because it's the same on each side. And that's why the other postmortem intervals like body temperature and liver mortis and and other factors are involved in what's going on at that. So that's you do all that stuff, and this is what investigators would be doing, and of course, what the MLI would be doing, helping the investigators try to help determine that. It's not like television, folks, where they look at their watch and go, "Yeah, this person died at 3:32 p.m." and no, it doesn't happen. So they have actually medical examiner's offices not releasing yet the time of death because they're going to work it all out. They're going to bring it. Maybe they're going to use vitreous humor. With vitreous humors, they extract from the eyes and they look at the potassium levels and they try to determine the estimated time of death through that also. So there are a lot of different factors that are at play in regards to the time of death. And it is really important because establishing the time of death puts the suspect at the location. Yes or no. That's it. Does the suspect have the opportunity to commit the crime during that time frame? And that's why the time of death is really important. So, Pokemon, do you think he checked in the hotel before or after? Well, if we're going by what they're saying on the tabloids, it appears as if it's after the fact. So my question would be, that would be another search warrant. So if anybody in LA is watching this, whatever that hotel was, if there was police activity at that hotel, and this is how you would corroborate a story from a tabloid. If you saw the video I did the other day about the exception to the search warrant and that murder is not an exception to the search warrant, and I mentioned a specific case in the third case in regards to that, and that was Flippo versus West Virginia, and that applied the Fourth Amendment rights to individuals in locations that are not their homes. For instance, a hotel room, and then also in that case it was a log cabin in the middle of the woods in West Virginia, and the Supreme Court said in Flippo that your protections as an American citizen are carried over against unreasonable search and seizures, and any evidence found would be excluded. Right, fruits of the poisonous tree, an exclusionary rule. Matt versus Ohio. All of those things, all those cases coming together on these things, and one of the things I like about cases like this is not that I like the murders and stuff like that, but they are really good lessons for Americans because sometimes we forget about the Bill of Rights and all the different aspects about what we really could be protected of and what really isn't being protected of. And the you're dealing with here is that the police would have to then go to this hotel room and execute another warrant. And you got to hope that the maids didn't clean it out and all the other stuff that goes along with it. So those are things that I would be waiting for as an observer now in regards to if that story is true or not, if he had a hotel room, right? And if he did, how did he pay for it? Right? Did he use a credit card? Did he use cash? All the different things that go along with it. Generally, hotels don't accept cash, but as we do know, there are some questionable hotels that will. So, do we know for sure? No, of course we don't. But remember, eh, the way that I think it could be different in what you guys are thinking. But in order to corroborate that, there has to be another warrant. And for those court watchers, search warrants are public information. Yes, they can block them. They can block them, but there is something called a search warrant return. Every search warrant has basically 2 pages to it. Could have more depending on the amount of stuff that there was listed. But the second page of it is called a search warrant return, and the police are required to bring that to the court that issued the search warrant. So, for those that do freedom of information requests and all those other things, that's what you're looking for in that respect. Or maybe you have somebody that works in the courthouse. They did ask about the murder weapon, and the district attorney skillfully dodged the question, and they said that these are the kind of things and evidence that we will show in court, not here. Folks, you have to remember the district attorney cannot say certain things in public. It's as simple as that. Because you can really screw up your case. So we expect the district attorney to be really dodgy in every kind of one of these press conferences. And once again, they were willing to answer questions. They answered some, they dodged others and just said they can't do it. But I want to see in the initial stages, I want to just see a presser where the executives and everybody else comes up there, if they're going to come up there, and just say, folks, we're going to give you what we have right now. There will be no questions. There are certain things we cannot release, and that's it. And people aren't going to like it. That's fine. But the issue that comes down to is, yes, the public has a right to know, but not about everything that goes on in these investigations. So that's basically what we have on the pressers today. Just want to give a couple of quick announcements. I have a couple of things brewing for. Hey, Heavenly Princess, thank you. Don't recommend the channel. That's great. Thank you very much. Uh, the DA said special circumstances. Joe, what are they? The special circumstances, Sheila, are they multiple homicides? Anytime there are two or more, it kicks in a special circumstance, and also the type of weapon used. In this case, a knife. That kind of that. He also said that ups the charge. So that's where the death penalty case murder one comes in from. And that's how they do it. And that's just about in every state that has a murder one charge. And any state that has a murder one charge is another little quick tidbit. The issue that comes down to is you have a murder one charge on the books. If the state has a murder one charge, they have a death penalty. It's as simple as that. And you look Bangladesh, mister. Okay. The Hey Sam, how are you? Why not consider joining us on Reddit? Yes. So we have a Reddit page that my friend here, Becky, has been helping me trying to get off the ground. It was one of the things I was planning on for 2026. Reddit is, a forum. We're starting conversations over there. You can join us over there as well, but you could also leave comments in in the shows or in the community page here on YouTube, and I try to answer all of them still. And that's the first thing that we have coming out. And also in 2026, I'll be releasing a newsletter. If you're interested, it's free. You could just go to the website. My website's being up. It's, as a matter of fact, the website is right there, josephjackalone.com. If you go down there and scroll down to the bottom, there's a place that you could put your email address in. And then starting in January, I'm going to not only be sharing what I am doing with the channel and about different cases that I'm actually not talking about, but I'm also going to be highlighting other creators that friends of mine, people like Gizla, Grizzly True Crime, and Bob Mata, Defense Diaries, and Joe Scott Morgan from Body Bags, and Cheryl McCollum at Zone 7, and all the people that I am friends with over the years. And we'll be highlighting all of what they're doing too that tie into some of these things. So it's just not going to be a look at me kind of newsletter. It's going to be informative, and it's going to show you some other things. Lulu, thank you very much for that super sticker. Again, I really appreciate that immensely. Thank you very much for your support. Carrie, is this a federal case or a state case? No, it is a state case right now, and I don't see a federal nexus coming. I don't see a federal nexus at all. And a federal nexus would be then the FBI would come in and take over the investigation. And I don't think there's anything there. This is going to be a straight up, looks like double homicide at the state level, and that's going to be it. Misner Effect, thank you very much for joining the channel. Thank you very much. Let's see. Icy Duck says Bush reported Michelle was still alive in the ambulance. Rami was with her. She said, "Yeah, I take all that stuff with a grain of salt." Icy Ducks. You know, because I think we would have had a film, we would have had video of that. The true crime community is out there in great numbers, and there are videotapes done right from the scene. They're streaming right from the scene, and we have seen no indication of any ambulances leaving that scene with anybody getting taken out in a stretcher. Generally, what you're dealing with in double homicides or any kind of homicide is if the person is obviously dead, it gets by the EMS person says that yes, or a doctor would say that this person is no longer alive, and then there's no reason to remove anybody from the scene. So we'll wait to see from official words. And actually, the district attorney even mentioned that, saying like, wait for the official words from stuff, and not so much what we hear on some of the tabloids. I'll refer to them as. But the New York Post had some interesting things about the streamers out there, and that they're basically getting in the way with the police and everything else that goes along with it, which you just never want to see in regards to that thing. Misner Effect, thank you, says extremely well spent. Thank you very much. I'm glad you are enjoying this. Don't the bodies stay at the scene? Yes, Walden. They'll stay at the scene when they are obviously deceased and they have been said so. They've been pronounced by a EMS, EMT, or a doctor. So the police don't make that decision. That's done by EMS, EMTs. If the person's still alive, of course, they're going to take them to the hospital. And that kind of complicates your crime scene, but it's just something you have to deal with. You want to see the person survive. So you want to be able to, if you have everybody there in regards to the situation where you have this case where and nothing has been disturbed, it makes your crime scene a lot easier. And also, again, it gives you a thing like so when you have a double homicide like this, if the time is right, 3 o'clock in the morning, sleeping, wherever it was going on, you could say to yourself, it was easy for the perpetrator to carry this out. Where when you have situations where it happened during the daytime and one person's in one room, one person's in the other room, and then there's this chase going on and somebody try to call 911, we don't see any of that. So it might be like a blitz style attack. We will know more about that as the days are coming. I'm sure when the arraignment comes, we're going to hear of other clues about what exactly is transpiring in this case. Just be mindful, folks. Everything you read and see on the internet isn't true, and it is becoming a problem in regards to some of these cases that you're dealing with. And folks, if you think that I'm about the pressers, like I'm making a big deal out of like the pressers for the chiefs of police, if you're just following, if you've been following the Brown University, mass shooting that they had up there the other day, those presses are absolutely awful. I'm thinking about doing another show specifically on those. And I'm also coming in January 26th. I'm planning on doing more solo shows like this. If you want to see more solo shows like this with me discussing these things, they'll be shorter in nature, of course, because you don't have the back and forth going on with people. Just let me know in the comments if you want to see more solo shows like this on Roll Call or afternoon shows or evening shows. Just let me know in the comments. And we're up to over 220 people watching this live. So I just wanted to say thank you. Just remember this Sunday, Josh Zeman from Sinister will be back on the show. We're going to be discussing, it appears as if the Andrew Dykes, he will be showing up in Nassau County allegedly this week. I think, I hope. So if not, we'll pivot to something else. But right now, that's the topic that we're going to be discussing. And of course, that's the Tanya Jackson and Tatiana Dykes, formerly known as Peaches and Baby Doe, that were found in Hempstead Lake State Park, Jones Beach, and also Gilgo Beach. So tune in Sunday, 2 p.m. right here on True Crime with the Sarge. I want to thank the mods. Thank you for the donations today, too. Hey, Viv, it's good to see you, Viv. Good to see you there. You folks, I want you guys to have a great day. Get a cup of coffee and hang in there. We'll see what happens next. Bye now.